And all of a sudden there was this moment like, oh shit, what if Margaret has made a joke about me?
Your story was such a culturally defining moment. And so I'm sure you just didn't feel safe.
All women are collateral damage to what happens when we're, degrading other women.
It was not just body shaming, but it was it was veiled racism.
You've been such a trailblazer.
I know that I am the inspiration for all of these wonderful Asian American comedians who saw me and realized, oh, I can do that. To me, that's my greatest achievement.
Hello from podcast land. In today's episode, I spoke with the brave and badass comedy pioneer, Margaret Cho. Margaret has numerous comedy specials to her credit. TV appearances, movies, and books, you name it. Margaret's been there and made us laugh. I expected to laugh, but I wasn't expecting to feel as much as I did when we went deep on what it's like to be a woman in the public eye and to have your body dissected on the world stage. But don't worry, she also gave us some classic Margaret Cho when she brought in her mom. Anyway, I hope you find something in our chat to connect to, and thanks for joining us on Reclaiming. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Audible. Love getting lost in heart-pounding stories? Audible delivers thrills of every kind. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat today. Sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/reclaiming. Thank you to our exclusive fashion partner, Reformation. I honestly can't tell you how many of their pieces have become my go-to favorites. Their sweaters have this incredible way of being both polished and comfortable. And in fact, when we recorded my own reclaiming story for the podcast, I was wearing the same Reformation sweater as the producer interviewing me, but thankfully we had the Clara on in different colors. Their clothes work for all moments in my life, whether it's a casual day out or a more formal occasion. I always find myself reaching for my Reformation pieces. Visit Reformation.com to see why they're one of my favorite brands for stylish and sustainable fashion. You are such a badass. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'm excited to meet you. I feel like we've met before, but I'm not sure.
I imagine we've probably been in some of the same places. I had a sort of fascinating experience in getting ready to chat with you, and I hadn't seen your, I don't know is it Psy-Cho or Psy-Cho? How did you?
I think it's both,
okay.
Yeah.
Very clever. I hadn't seen that, and I went to watch it, and I realized in the process that I hadn't actually seen some of your other stand-up shows or your specials. And I, in large part because I haven't actually seen any in the last 27 years unless I knew the comedian personally.
Right.
I think it was very conscious for me the first 10 years after 1998.
Of course.
But I hadn't realized it had become this subconscious thing for me of kind of, sphincter clenching in order to watch a comedy special.
Like you don't feel safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Because your story was such a culturally defining moment for so many people and so many comedians. And that was the one thing that was always brought up, in whatever context. And so I'm sure you just didn't feel safe. It was outside of you as a person. It became something totally different. It had nothing to do with you. It was just a topic that had nothing to do with the actual incident itself and just became a symbol for, if we're going to talk about sexuality, if we're going to talk about semen, then your name would be brought up. And it was just not safe for you. I would imagine, at being a comedian at the time, I remember thinking, this is outside of it being even attached to the incident. It's totally another thing. So I can imagine it'd be hard to watch comedy.
Yeah. I mean, I often will refer to myself as a social canvas. So in the same way of exactly what you're saying. I was talking to some of the producers before our chat, and all of a sudden there was this moment like, oh shit, what if Margaret has made a joke about me, and I thought, well, it's fine. I've moved past all these things, but you didn't. And in fact, you actually had said something incredibly astute and something that felt so powerful to me in talking about the expensive laugh. You were talking about the Bill O'Reilly settlement and the woman who, one of the women whom he had sexually harassed. And I think it was like she got a $60 million settlement. You were talking about how people's names become part of the culture and the jokes that happen. And you said this great thing: it's an expensive laugh charged to those who could not possibly afford it. And it was just it was really powerful. So thank you for saying that when you did.
Thank you. But it's just like, I think that for such a long time in comedy, people felt so emboldened to just say the most terrible things about women and not realize that there was a human being at the end, at the other side of that has to hear it, and it's just like, I always hope to have compassion in anything that I do, and including my comedy, unless it's like really undeserved when you're talking about somebody like Elon Musk or Donald Trump. You want to say whatever because they deserve it, whatever it is. But for people who are just everyday people, they don't deserve that. They don't deserve what comes at them. It's also, everybody doesn't know the whole story.
I think also, too, especially with women, what is so complicated is that we're sort of all collateral damage. All women are collateral damage to what happens when we're, degrading other women, making jokes about other women. It makes it easier and easier to engage in that kind of behavior, you know?
Yeah.
So I think I often think about what women our age were experiencing watching someone, a young person in their early 20s, or mid 20s, being excoriated on the world stage for her sexuality. I mean, among other things, right? I just feel like you've brought so much feminism and intellect to your humor.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I love that you're here doing this and telling your story and being out there and, making so much of what happened to you and then really, really, truly rising above. I mean, you are a phoenix. Like, it's really incredible. Thanks. So, because, like that era, I think it's like also coincides with the birth of the internet and the birth of this idea of like, oh, finally we could actually bully people en masse. Well, we didn't have that ability before, 1998. We didn't have this channel to do so. And so it's it's really shocking, that damage that got done. Some people didn't survive from it. People, I think, like Anna Nicole Smith is a really big example of somebody who just couldn't survive the bullying that she received during that era. And so we have a lot to make up for. We have a lot to do and say about it.
Well, I think also, too, in that time period in the 90s, there was Kate Moss thin chicness, this sort of thinness. And so I know you also experienced, but we didn't have a word for it then, but the fat shaming that happened. Yeah. And so I think my complicated relationship with my body started from a very young age. Was that your experience, too?
Oh, yeah, totally. Like, I always felt insecure about my body because I was so much larger than the other Korean girls. Like, I was so large and so loud and so always getting in trouble for both of those things. Eating too much or talking too much or talking too fast or eating too fast. Those are the things that were my main crimes as a kid. And so I naturally gravitated to comedy because those things actually made me a better comedian or more easier to listen to. But then when I went to do television, I was so offensively larger than anybody on camera, and also I was Asian. So the other thing, like, it was so different that I got a lot of bullying, a lot of shaming, fat shaming, racism, all of this stuff that I just had to kind of take in as normal. And if I was angry about it, then I wasn't being a good sport, which was, ridiculous.
I think in my teens too, I really suffered in terms of I was in an eating disorder unit for a month when I was, I
Mm.
think it was like 16 or 17.
Mhm.
And I felt like it was a time in my life too that felt where you're really just trying to figure out who you are.
Mhm.
And I know that around that age, right? That's sort of when you started. Is that when you started your comedy?
Yes. I started comedy in my teens, and then I felt a lot of acceptance. Like I was doing comedy as a young teenager, and then started to become very successful around 18, 19. And then I didn't really get into problems with my image or body image. All that started when I was doing television. So that didn't start till I was 24. And
Hmm.
but it was such an onslaught of just opinions about what my body should look like. And
And just for context, could you tell me just a little bit what exactly happened with the network and your weight?
well, they were having these meetings, you know, like they were all like super concerned, like the producers and everybody, they were like super concerned, like what what are we gonna do? Like our face is just so large. Like your face is so large. Your face is so large. We can't possibly. And it was like I think it was just because I don't know if it was that it was my face was that large, is that I was Asian, and they'd
Hmm.
never had an Asian person on television like that. So it was like really hard for them to even like, why is her face like that? Is she fat? Like they couldn't actually like make that. And and now I actually look back on we were actually talking like numbers weight wise. I'm like 130, which is not even fat. So it's like a weird. It was weird. So I was put on this like emergency diet. They had like paid for all this food to get like shipped to my house that I had to eat like from like little, you know, when like you have to lose weight like for real, you have to eat food in a bunch of little boxes. It's such a
Yeah.
demoralizing thing when you're like just trying to eat out of a bunch of boxes. It's just a nightmare. And then I had a trainer come over who would like train with me, and then I just didn't sleep, ate a bunch of little boxes, and worked out like a crazy person. I lost like 30 pounds in I think it was like 2 weeks, like insane, not right. It was not right. And I started urinating blood.
Oh my
And it
God.
was such a harrowing experience. Like it didn't make any sense. And it was like, and I was just working on something that I couldn't fix really. Like, cause I can't change the fact that I'm Asian by losing weight. That it's just not
Hmm.
going to change it. So it was like a lot of things. It was not just body shaming, but it was like it was veiled racism. Is it was
Hmm.
more than just my body. And then you know the way that it was kind of presented, I felt really bad too because they had the woman who was in charge actually give me the news, and it was like I felt bad because she was like my friend, and you know, like I think she felt really bad about it too, and it was all really terrible for everyone. And the fact is I was sort of not focused on the comedy aspect of it. Like I was just worried about my weight. So it took my mind off the job really to make a funny show, which I think the show was definitely good, but also I'm a crass nighttime comedian, and the show was supposed to be in the family hour on ABC in the 90s, which is like a very conservative time for TV. Television only had 3 channels. So
Hmm.
it was a very hard fit. Like I was a hard fit for that time slot and a hard fit for the idea of like race in general. So, you know, like I look back and I don't think I could have done anything better. I don't think I could have done
Yeah.
anything. I think I did as well as I could. That's the other thing. Like what what like element of does like regret have anything to do with it? I don't think I have any because I don't think I could have done anything differently.
Interesting. I tend to think with with things that live or loom large in the collective, I
Hmm.
tend to think that they can only shift as much as the collective is ready.
Right.
And so it's sort of you know, you broke that ceiling, you know, however,
Hmm.
glass ceiling, not ceiling, whatever. But I think it's you got as far as the collective was ready.
Yeah.
And then the next person gets to they get to go a bit farther and a bit
Yeah.
farther. And
That's
that's
right.
it can be challenging if you're the
Hmm.
one who's wants to go a really long distance and the collective only lets you go a
Yeah.
few inches. But that's how I think collective change happens.
Yes,
So,
I agree. You know, I was supposed to be an ingenue in my television show, and that people were just like, well, they couldn't possibly believe that I would be an ingenue or that I would be a romantic lead. And it's sad because like I really look back at photographs of that era and I'm like, wow, I was really great looking, but I just never appreciated. You know, I allowed society to tell me what I should feel about myself, and that was like my biggest mistake.
when do you think that shifted for you? That you sort of put a stop to letting other people define you and how you were feeling about your body or yourself?
I think it was like maybe when I was in my 30s, then I realized I wasn't going to get to a place of agreement with I'm never going to lose enough weight. I'm never going to be white. I'm never going, like it occurred to me like I'm never going to be any of these things that society would have me be. And so at that point, it was like a very conscious decision. But in a lot of ways, I never stopped listening to society's opinion. Now the criticism has changed a bit because now I'm older. That's the other thing. Like you have to kind of deal with age as well. So it's like unfortunately, there's still a part of me that exists in that I'm not good enough. And that's, it's like why I've been to therapy for such a long time. That's why I am in a number of recovery type movements. There's a lot of healing that I still have to do because it's not over. If you grow up that way, those feelings, they will eat you up. And so it's a lifelong struggle to hold them at bay.
Yeah. No, I hear you on the lifelong therapy and all the different things. My stepmom always says that, right, it always has the ing because it keeps going. It's like that healing process. All of the work I've done and then that sort of intersecting with turning 50, I felt like I turned a corner for myself personally. So it's amazing to me that you had felt like you were starting to see some change in how you were feeling about your body and things in your 30s.
Yeah.
And what happened, there was an incident with the show, with All American Girl, where you're playing yourself and yet they're telling you that you
I was too fat to play myself. Yeah, like I'm playing myself, but at the same time, I'm too fat to play myself. I didn't eat any food. I was exercising like a maniac. I took fen-phen. Remember fen-phen, that drug that was like...
I did. I've done everything.
Yeah, I took that. It made me really crazy. And I had kidney failure and I was hospitalized. I mean, it was a really terrifying experience. And then I all of my energy was channeled into having a smaller body. So much that I couldn't even think about what is funny. Like what is, like I was supposed to be a comedian, but I couldn't even think of anything funny because when you go on extreme crash diets like that, you can't think.
Yeah.
Like you can't, that's the one thing, like your brain shuts down. And so I was really in a terrible place. And then the show was canceled and I'm like, yeah, but I'm a size 4. Like how is it possible? How can you cancel my show? I'm a 4.
You're supposed to reward me.
And it was really, and then you had Kate Moss. Kate Moss was like the beauty of the time. It's just poor Kate Moss.
She was the standard. I know.
She was the standard, and we were all sort of trying to emulate. And she didn't make things worse because all she did was talk about how much she ate, which is really another funny thing, which I don't believe.
Hate that. I know.
I don't believe
that.
her.
I remember growing up in LA. So of course it was like I went on my first diet, I think when I was 10. And at some point in high school, hearing that models would eat cotton balls. So to fill their stomach up, right? So it was sort of that. I don't think I tried that one, but everything else in that sense of, and I did have some friends that were able to kind of eat whatever they wanted, but it was few and far between. And I was never that.
I was never, ever that. Also, makeup sponges. You could just ball up a makeup sponge and swallow it. And
I
had
heard
another
that
thing.
one.
That was one where you could do a couple of shots of tequila on an empty stomach and it would upset your stomach so much that you didn't eat. That just turned me into an alcoholic. all those things, like to circumvent eating, like the most primal thing that we have to do. It's really, it's outrageous. I can't believe it.
I felt like growing up in LA, there was sort of this idea of you could be anything but fat. That
Yeah.
was what it felt like for me growing up. And that I also had this idea that if I got down to the right weight, whatever that was, whatever weight that was, then I would be happy.
Right.
And sort of, right. And then life would be perfect, that somehow everything would fall into place. And
Yeah.
I've been so many different weights and sizes. And of course, it's like you then learn the thing that you don't really want to have to learn, which is that it all comes from the inside. It's all
Right.
spiritual and energetic and, chemical and your emotions and all those things.
Well, like I thought if I was thinner that I would be loved. And that never was the case. Then that didn't actually come into play. I mean, the betrayal that I felt like when I got thin and not having those things, the disappointment of getting to that quote unquote goal weight and not being happy was such a slap in the face of all that I had believed growing up. So it's just like, it's just a thing that society does on women to keep us distracted from being in our own power, to keep us distracted from attaining our own power, and being powered by ourselves. So just another way that misogyny takes that out of us. And, that doesn't mean it doesn't affect men too. But
Right.
I think
But the
it
fucking
affects
patriarchy.
women a lot. Yeah, it's a patriarchy still. I feel like it's because in the 90s and in the 80s too, that women were emerging with a kind of social power that had never been seen. So that they had to hold us down somewhere. And there was just a woman's body. Like the body was always going to be someplace where we could fight over.
Yeah.
This idea of beauty and desirability became politicized in size. And so you just couldn't win.
Yeah. I mean, I remember in 98, I was somehow so fat and ugly but I was also somehow the temptress. I mean, it was just this kind of these two things that couldn't quite go together. It was always a really fascinating thing to me. I mean, painful, but also fascinating.
Yeah. But the truth is that you are and were a beautiful girl. And the fact is that we just had such a narrow view of like, what body can we sexualize? If it's not Kate Moss, it's not applicable. The perception was off. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear what Courtney Love said? She's like, I would have fucked Monica. That's my type. Like, you don't, like, I don't want, like, she's like, that's, of course. She's like, I'm like almost 100% straight. But if I'm fucking, if I'm going to go for a girl, it's going to be a girl who eats. Because she's going to, like, want to be part of it. She's going to, like, really tear you up. And that's, like, I think that's what people really did feel. Like, we aren't all attracted to a Kate Moss, but that was the way that society was framing it.
You're so fascinating. And, I think for me, your dark humor is like exactly my kind of humor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that I think this feels so weird to say, but there's that great story about when you tried to attempt suicide.
Oh yeah.
And
This is what happened. Well, I tried to commit suicide, but I was like, I hung myself from my shower curtain rod, but then the rod started bending and I was like, oh shit, I'm too fat to kill myself. So I got down and I'm like, okay, I'll try again when I reach my goal weight, which means I'm never going to kill myself. But I mean, how depressing. Like, but that's what healing is. Like when you can actually laugh at like the most terrible thing. It's all true. That's all real.
Yeah.
When you can laugh at it, it's like, I'm going to live. Like laughing is an unexpected breath that you take that ensures your life for the next 15 seconds or whatever. So laughing is like longevity. Laughing is life affirming in a very, very granular, basic way.
I mean, I laughed so hard when I heard, because that's the kind of thing. I mean, I had I had laser eye surgery 1,000 years ago, and it was after LASIK had come out, but the eye doctor was like, oh, well, you have to have the old-fashioned PRK because you have thin corneas. And I was like, so the only thin thing on my body, it's bad, that way. But I survived. So even though it was terrorizing, like Clockwork Orange, being able to see it was so bad. They didn't give me enough Xanax. So yeah,
So scary.
no, it was so bad. But I mean, do you feel in many ways, because I am someone who I think if you can't laugh in your worst moments, you're so fucked. And my family and I survived on gallows humor. Do you feel like humor has saved your life in that
All
sense?
the time, every day, and continues to, and that's one of the things that I rely on, especially now. I'm very disappointed in the way that the government is. I really wanted Kamala to be president, and
Ditto.
I worked on that really hard, and a lot of people did, and it's a nightmare if you pay attention to government and you're sort of a compassionate person. It's a real struggle. So we're gonna have to rely on humor for the next. And may not even be 4 years. It might be 8, might be 16. We don't know what's going to happen. So I'm very much going to be relying on humor for the coming years.
Have you found yourself trying to turn towards humor more in the last several months in particular?
Yeah, throughout the campaign and I was part of like a group of comedians that we were writing jokes for surrogates on the campaign trail. And it was just so funny to look at like all of the sort of the things that people were trying to write. And, I think, comedians are the best. I always love all of my comedian friends, and, we were all trying to do something good. So we'll be really leaning on each other.
I think what was so fascinating to me too in watching Psy-Cho was that you were talking about your sort of, I think you called her your mentor, but also another mother of Joan Rivers.
Yes.
And so it was really interesting to me because I don't have a positive mental association or, kind of feelings about her from that time period. And yet listening to you talk about what she had been to you in your life forced me to kind of open up and find like this layer of compassion or light. It just was such an interesting experience for me to have, and just such a good reminder of how dimensionalized we all are in different ways, And
the complexity of a person, and I could see why you would have issues with her. She could be very mean and she could be really cutting and not. But the thing about her is that when you look back at her body of work, she would be that same way, but it's a different person. So for a long time, it was Elizabeth Taylor. And then it became you, and then it became Kim Kardashian. So it was not necessarily personal. It had to do with a sort of iconographical view of the way that she would write about certain cultural figures. They would plug in to sort of the zeitgeist, to the woman of the moment. So if that helps a little bit to understand that never personal. It only goes to like, well, if society's going to go this way and they're going to attach another name to this, I'm going to attach another name as well. So that's kind of what it had to do with.
Oh, it's really interesting. It certainly felt personal, but I can see how women would have to kind of carve their own path in ways for that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, do you feel like, if not individual comedians, but society has sufficiently apologized to you as they should? Do you feel like a sense of apology?
I guess apology feels like a loaded word to me, which is interesting. And that's something for me to explore whenever my next therapy session is. And I guess I say that about apology because I think what comes up for me is slightly complicated feelings around self-worth, some of the shame I still carry, or some of the blame I still put on myself for what happened. When I stepped back out into the public arena in 2014, what I started to find, and I came up with this cockamamie little thing for myself, was that every time someone said something positive to me or acknowledged that they wish they had behaved differently, that it erased two negative things from the past. So like in an energetic way, because I think my very deep healing had started from sound healing, resonance work, and coming to understand how impacted my field had been from the negativity. I don't know if this is too woo-woo for you.
No, it's good. I like it. I do the same stuff. So yes.
Oh, okay, great. All right, good. I think for me that it was understanding that my energetic fields had been so damaged by what had been lobbed at me because I wasn't someone who was stepping into the public eye, kind of building up my energy field or my aura or my sense of self to be able to receive that kind of attention. And so I had to start working to heal my field before I could sort of grow and move forward. Have you done somatic therapy at all in all your different?
I have done EMDR and talk therapy and group therapy, but I haven't done somatic therapy, not yet. So that's a new field.
What has group therapy been like for you as a public person?
I think it's been really helpful. I mean, it's also, different recovery communities, different 12-step communities. Okay. So, they're based on secrecy. That's one of the founding notions of it, the anonymity of it. And, of course, people violate that all the time. But at the same time, I feel like in general, it's held me in good stead. So I find a great deal of healing and comfort from it. Although I think I have to trust it all the time. You just have to have faith.
That feels very brave to me. I read that you had also had experiences when you were younger of being violated sexually.
Yeah.
And you've been very open about it, which I think is so powerful and helps so many people in meaningful ways. It made me think about how many of us who have experienced those boundaries being violated in different ways, whether it's an unwanted sexual experience or sexual assault or abuse, all of the combination, that some people end up pushing all of that pain outward, and others of us sort of pull it onto ourselves. And do you see it that way at all? Does that feel familiar to you with what your experiences have been, or?
Yes. And it's sort of how we process it. And it's a constant processing. And because a lot of times when you're abused, you internalize the abuse and then you start to abuse yourself in the same manner. Because of that, into order to even understand or deal with my own sexuality, I had to do a lot of drinking and a lot of drugs. And so now that sort of became the metaphor. So I was just in self-abuse. I had got rid of the abuser and became the abuser. And so that was really difficult to get over. And, I'm in recovery. I'm sober for a long time now. And I'm really grateful for that. But it's a constant vigilance. That's why I have to be in therapy. That's why I have to do so much work on it to make sure I keep that abuser at bay. The shame of it's when it happens to you when you're a child, the shame of it is it's almost hardwired into your psyche. So I was really moved by, the Pellico case where in France, where the husband had all of these men take advantage of his wife while he drugged her. It's just horrible. And
it was 60 plus men.
Yeah.
60, over 60 men.
And there's video of it, and it's just horrible. And she was so cool. She came out of the courtroom and she just said, "The shame is not ours to bear." And it was so powerful that she allowed herself to be photographed, because in France traditionally they don't photograph or name the people in the court, the trial, whatever. She's just it's not my shame, and I'm proud to be here. And it was just so powerful, and it made me realize we've come so far. And I feel like that's the attitude. The shame is not ours to bear. The shame is not mine to bear. And I thought that was so healing. I mean, in a second, you can be healed like that. And
right.
That was power.
No, I agree. And I also, it felt so authentic and coming
Hmm.
from her in a
Yeah.
way. And I
Hmm.
think exactly as you're saying that it was able to heal so many people on a quantum level, really.
Yeah.
I think because
Yeah.
it came from her in that deep way. I was talking to a friend of mine about the case, and I think the thing that, while you're right about the strides forward, what felt a little sad to me was that it was kind of another incidence along the lines of, I think, what eventually came to move the Black Lives
Hmm.
Matter movement forward was because of technology, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I wonder, would she have been believed without the videos? But maybe as we have more and more moments of people seeing that there is the hardcore truth there,
Hmm.
that you then, that we might start to doubt women a little less, I hope.
The truth is like what I mean, what is technology is like helping us to understand ourselves more, but also technology is again finding new ways to abuse us, whether that's
Oh, yeah.
used, sort of AI, that kind of stuff, like where it's so deviant where you're actually like making things worse, but in a lot of ways it makes things better because we have undeniable proof too of what things are occurring. So that is, it's good and it's bad.
There certainly is the abuse that's happened in the bots. This
Hmm.
idea that you can be bullied by a fucking computer of not even
Yeah,
a real
that's not even
person
not
sitting
even a real
there.
person. That's so
Yeah,
crazy.
it's bonkers. It is, and it's really, with a lot of the anti-bullying work I've done has been trying to focus on young people, because I
Hmm.
think in that sense you don't have a full sense of yourself yet. You haven't
Right.
gone through enough cycles, right? Of like,
Right.
oh, this fucked up thing happens. You don't think you're ever going to get through it. That you'll ever move on, and then it does happen,
Hmm.
and you do move on. And the more that happens, the more you're able to kind of move through the next time something shitty happens, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
thanks so much to Audible, our presenting sponsor. Are you looking for your next big thrill? Audible's got you covered with all kinds of adventure right at your fingertips. Whether you're into heart-racing mysteries, epic quests, or fantasy, they've got stories that'll keep you hooked. You'll love diving into gripping titles that keep you guessing until the final moment. Experience exclusive, captivating Audible originals you won't find anywhere else. Want to know what everyone will be talking about before they're talking about it? Be the first to hear anticipated new releases and discover must-listen bestsellers that will grab your attention. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat on Audible. Start your adventure today. Sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/reclaiming. That's audible.com/reclaiming. Thanks so much to our sponsor, Reformation. I want to take a second to talk about one of my favorite clothing brands, Reformation. You've probably seen Reformation on Instagram or at a wedding. They make the best guesting dresses. But if you're like me, you may have thought that's all they do. Well, you're in for a pleasant surprise. Last year, they worked with yours truly and Vote.org on a campaign to empower voters to take part in the democratic process and show off their workwear. From doing the campaign and getting to know the brand even better, I love their sweaters, blouses, workwear, shoes, and bags. But most important, I love how confident I feel in their stuff. Plus, it really holds up since they make everything with super high-quality, sustainable materials. Reformation is also a brand that uses their growing platform to do good in the world, and especially in the sustainable fashion space. As they say, being naked is the #1 most sustainable option. Reformation is #2. If you're looking for clothes you want to feel great in and feel better about, head to reformation.com. You danced on off-Broadway naked on
Yes.
stage, right? Okay.
Yes.
Will you
Yes.
tell
A
me
lot.
about
A lot.
that? Because, and then we don't have to talk about body stuff the whole time, but I want to hear all about that.
It's so fun. So I had a show called The Sensuous Woman. It was like a burlesque review. It was off Broadway and it toured all over the place. It had started as a charity show in Los Angeles where we were raising money for different organizations every week. And then it started with Habitat for Humanity. And then, we were like just doing all these different dance things. And then the show got really popular, and then we went to New York with it. And for me, it was this extremely like celebratory thing of like this body that I had so much problems with, you know, that I was at war with all the time, with like not being the right size and the right color. And so finally doing a show that was just about celebrating and being naked, it was so fun. And I didn't really feel naked because I had like pasties and like, you know, I had a fake, all this fake genitals. Like it was like such a mad show.
Isn't there a name for it? It's like not a Melvin, but
like a merkin. Yes.
A merkin. Right.
So everything was like covered, you know, essentially covered up, but also like parodied. Like I parodied my own genitals, which I think is like the most ridiculous thing. And to me, it was so fun and so ridiculous. Like not even sexy, just like bizarre and surreal. So I think that if you have like some kind of feelings about your body, a great way to kind of work that out is dance. You know, like get out there, go to a dance class and move. You know, when we can actually move all those parts that bother us, there's some healing in that. You know, when you can actually put that problem to a rhythm and pop it, it's quite healing.
Oh, I'm gonna have to try that. I did Zumba for a little while. I'm a very bad dancer.
Have you done Dancing with the Stars? Have you been asked?
No. Yes, I was. And in fact, as no offense to Dancing with the Stars, but I played an April Fool's joke on my family. So it was a few weeks after I did my TED Talk, and I texted my family and said that I was going to do Dancing with the Stars, and my dad flipped out. He's like, "But your ankles, you're a terrible dancer, like, and your ankles are always failing," and the whole thing. So I fucked around with them because, you know, my brother's
so
like, "But
funny.
you just did a TED Talk. How do you know, what are you doing?" So did you do it?
I did it, and it was actually very physically taxing, but it was a lot of fun. It's one of those shows that it's just like kind of a like real cultural like landmark. You sort of got to do it, but I had a good time, but it was physically very difficult.
We were talking about All American Girl before, and that you've been such a trailblazer in so many different ways, and just not only for women, but I also think in how you've, you know, straddled like 1 foot in Korean culture and 1 foot in sort of white American culture, and how you've brought attention to that through, I think humor's one of the best forms of communication, ways of communicating that gets people to open up. And so do you see yourself that way too?
Yes, totally. I mean, I know that I am the inspiration for people like Ali Wong and Joel Kim Booster and Bowen Yang and Sherry Cola and all of these wonderful Asian American comedians who saw me and realized, oh, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. She's doing that. I can do that. And to me, that's my greatest achievement, you know, that I was visible at a time where people were vulnerable and needed somebody to look up to and aspire to. And so I'm so grateful, and I'm riding on all of their coattails. I'm always asking them all for jobs constantly, and they have to give them to me because I make them. So it's great.
Yeah. How did your parents respond when your show got picked up?
Well, I called my mother, and it was Mother's Day, and she was like, "Oh, this is the best Mother's Day ever." I mean, I think like, you know, it's like she was very excited. I mean, we were all excited, but it was like perfectly timed. You know, my parents couldn't imagine that, you know, their kid was like going to be on television. Like they just didn't want me to be a comedian because they didn't think that Asian Americans could possibly be anything in entertainment because they'd never seen it. So. So that was like very exciting for my mom. She was like, "This is the best Mother Day ever." And she's still like, "I'm so famous because I'm Margaret Cho mother." And I'm like, "Yeah, don't fucking forget it."
I want to meet your mom.
She's fun.
Yeah.
She's fun. She's 90, almost 90, 89.
Wow.
She's old. She's having a good time.
Oh, good. I know your parents were born in Korea and you were born
Hmm.
here. And
Yes.
so my aunt was born in Tokyo and my mom was raised in Tokyo. And so
Mm.
there were these different ways that the Asian culture would come into my family, like we call flip-flop zoris and,
Hmm.
you know, different things like that. And so what was that like for you in San Francisco?
Well, my parents were like so Americanized in their own way, and then also so Korean in their own way because they were in San Francisco. They had a gay bookstore in the Polk on Polk in
Mm-hmm.
California. So we had a gay bookstore from the
Okay.
70s on.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
I think because my dad loves male attention, he still does. He's very handsome. So it's like
Okay.
very like, I think male beauty is South Korea's greatest export. They all are very, very handsome. So he was very appreciated by all the men there.
That reminds me of the story of Daddy's friend. Do you mind telling me that?
That my dad has always been sort of like his sexuality is very thinly veiled, and so um, my mother tells her, when Daddy was young, he had friend. You have such a good friend, and you love your friend so much, you don't know what to do. And the Daddy had his friend, and then one day, Daddy's friend tried to kiss Daddy, and Daddy punched his friend, and they never talk ever again. So don't when your friend tried to kiss you, don't punch. That was the story.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So, when you say thinly veiled sexuality, though, about your dad, do you think if your dad had been born in a different time that he would be gay
I don't know. I think he just
or
likes,
bisexual?
yeah, probably. Like, I think he just loves male attention because he feels like women just don't know what's beautiful, but men really
Mm,
know. So I think it's the patriarchy part of that. But yeah,
yeah.
very, little cheeky. I don't know. Never sure. My parents are very like westernized in their own way. And so I was equally that. And then removed from Korean culture because my parents were not like allowing us to speak Korean. We were like, my brother and I were supposed to be very Americanized. That's what, like the whole thing. Like my
Yeah.
generation is we were not going to be Korean. We were going to be American. Now I've backtracked even more because now I speak Korean fluently and I'm a big K drama fan and I'm very into
Yeah.
going to Korea and I love it. So I think I've reclaimed a lot of my Koreanness.
Where in Korea? I've been to Seoul. That was.
We're from Busan. We're like the bridge and tunnel people. Like we're like the Jersey Shore people, like more working class. There are a lot of people who fish. There's a lot of fishing and gambling and alcoholism. So that's our people.
Has your brother done the same sort of, found more of his Korean heritage?
Yeah, I think he doesn't speak it as much as I. He doesn't seek it out as much as I do. Like I really try to study it and like I try to like speak it as much as I can. And, he is a little bit less so, but
Hmm.
he's still, I mean, he's an artist, he's an actor, he's really, really good. And he's like very much like, you know, um, on sort of my side of like artistic kind of points of view. So, but yeah, I think I'm more Korean than he is. I bet.
Okay. Yeah, it's I went in 1997 when I
Hmm.
was working at the Pentagon. So my experience there was very skewed in that I think I had maybe 3 hours to really explore the city,
Hmm.
and I went to Itaewon and spent all
Oh,
my
nice.
overtime pay on
Yeah.
knockoff bags because I didn't. I was like,
So
I'm
fun.
getting a Chanel and a Louis Vuitton and this and because we're coming back on government plane, I knew I wasn't going to get stopped in customs. So
Nice.
I know it's like
Amazing.
breaking the law before I, you know, perjured myself.
Do you still have bags from your line? Didn't you had a
I
handbag
do.
line? Yeah,
I did have one. Do you want one? I
I do
do
want
still
one.
have them.
Yeah, I
Okay,
want one.
I'm gonna send you a crystal because I give all my guests a crystal. Just
Perfect.
because I feel like it's an exchange of energy and
Yeah,
I appreciate your time. But
yeah.
I'll schlep out to storage
I
and
would
pick one
love
out for you.
one. I would love
Yeah.
one. They're
No,
so
I you're
cool.
oh, thanks. You're sweet. What are you working on now? Might you do a new special
Yes,
to help
yes.
us through the next
Yes.
4 years?
Well, I have a show I'm on tour with now called Live and Live It,
Oh,
which is
okay.
all about this.
Have you come to LA yet?
Oh, yes, yes. But I'm always here. Since I
Okay.
live here, I'm always here. So I have an album of music that comes out called Lucky Gift. So it's a music
Okay.
album that I've been working on for a long time. And I also make a lot of music, which is another form of healing for me. So the songs are really special, and the album will be out soon.
So I like to ask everybody at the end of the chat, if they are kind of working on reclaiming anything, something personal or a physical object. If there's anything you're looking at reclaiming right now.
I think I'm really trying to reclaim like a childlike wonder all the time. Like I want to be so like not jaded about things. I don't want to be cynical about things. I want to actually have like innocence and wonder again about whatever it is. I think when I was really young, there was like so much wonder that I've lost over time, and I'd like to get that back. So that's what I'm always trying to reclaim.
In the woo-woo category, I had a reading with a channeler, and she was talking about wonder and how reorienting your kind of your lens in how you see things and ask questions of yourself and using the word wonder, like I wonder if, I wonder that, as a way to try to bring it into your life more, which I thought was
Yeah.
really interesting.
That
Which is
is.
really, in the same way she also talked about with abundance of like trying to, notice the things, noticing how many leaves are on a tree, the abundance of leaves, the abundance of grass, of just
Yeah.
all those ways that abundance is all around us. But
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
that's
love
wonderful.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Thanks so much. Hope to see you
Thank you.
soon.